Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Peter from Baerveldt Productions. Today we're gonna talk about creating a film look. We're gonna do the following things. We're gonna watch the video. We're gonna talk a little bit about the concept. We're gonna talk about how to shoot it. Then we're gonna jump into post-production, of course, the main subject of this video. And then we're gonna draw some conclusions. So without further ado, let's roll that intro. So today we're gonna talk about creating a look that feels like film. We're not gonna create an actual representation of the original film stock made by, for example, Kodak. And in order to get the best results when shooting a film look type of video, we're gonna talk about concept for at least a little bit. Because creating a film look acquires a couple of things. For example, it needs grain. And of course, in the case of 18 and 60mm film, there is a different frame rate. The frame rate is around 18. So if you shoot at a frame rate of 24 frames, you need to drop that down to 18 frames to make it as genuine as possible. That back in the day, they didn't have awesome Ronin-esque gimbals, movies, that sort of stuff. They used the camera's handheld with no stabilization whatsoever. So if you're really trying to nail that specific film look, you have to shoot handheld. Try to use vintage lenses because first of all, they are awesome and they give you a really cool effect. And because those lenses are older, they work different, they have different coatings, they flare really cool. For a couple of projects that I wanted to create the vintage look, I used vintage lenses. My fashion video called Butterfly was shot on the Red Raven with vintage lenses. And this is the moment that we're all have been waiting for. We're gonna do the actual color grading of this footage. We're gonna open up Premiere, we're gonna do some grading. So we're gonna first do the color correction. We're gonna apply some contrast to a level where we think it's nice. We're gonna push in some highlights just to get this base going. We're gonna drop some shadows, for example, like this. We're gonna push some whites, and you can just check your lumetri scopes to see if you're doing right here. Now let's do some white balance. So we're gonna check a cleaner type of look like this. And now you have your base for this color grade. Now you can obviously put in some more or less saturation depending on the look that you're going for. Now we're gonna go to the next tab, and that is the creative tab. But something that we're gonna use is the sharpen tool. And the sharpen tool, it can de-sharpen or sharpen your footage. And because film has this soft kind of feel to it, using those sharpen tool to de-sharpen the actual footage is really nice. The color wheels is a really useful and awesome tool. It's much like the 3 color wheels that you have in DaVinci, but a lot easier and more basic. So for today's look, we're gonna go with a purple, bluish kind of shot. So we're gonna go into highlights, and as you can see, if you push it a lot, you can see it turns purple all the way. But if you push it just like a tiny bit, it's gonna have this purple warm feel, like you can see right now. It's not too much, so it has a nice feel to it. Now we can do the shadows. For example, you can choose to do a complementary look on that, so you can just make these shadows look a bit greenish. But I'm leaning towards the blue, colder type of shadows that you can see, for example, in the orange and teal type look. Now, in the midtones, we can really decide the overall look of this shot. And so you can see, you can make it warmer, you can make it a bit like greener, but you also can choose to make it a bit colder. And when you do this colder look and you have already made your highlights leaning towards purple, lean towards green when using these midtones curves. So you can push down these highlights. And you can see that does actually quite a bit. And when you do these kind of things, don't overdo it. That is key, don't overdo it. Now we can up the shadows and just do this until a point where the blacks aren't crushed anymore, but before they turn gray. That's just a personal preference, but I don't like it when my my overall look is super washed out and it's gonna look cheap. Alright, next up we can go back to the basic correction, and in this slider we can actually look and change the overall feel to the film. So for example, if you want, like I said, I wanted a bluish kind of look, I'm just gonna drop down this slider for quite a bit, and I'm gonna push it towards purple for like a tiny bit. Now I can see that I have this blue purplish look that really looks awesome. But I can see that my shadows might be a little soft, so I'm gonna change those right here. Just make them a little darker. And I'm gonna check what I want to do with the highlights. I think I'm gonna leave this for now. And now we're gonna do the second part of grading a film look. Now you have to look a first draft of the overall look of this footage. Now we're gonna add some grain. I already have my Gorilla Grain here. This is the 35mm medium grain. It's clean in 4K and it's a ProRes file, so it's high res. So if you do the film look, I really think you should invest in some proper and good grain files. But if you're not, and you're not in a place where you can actually afford to buy this grain, you can go to the Gorilla Grain website, and they have a free grain and film burns as test sample just to see if it's any good. So this is the grain. You're gonna go to Effect Controls. Let's open this back up. Change the blending mode to overlay, and you can see it already applies quite well. So this could be your look. So something that you always need to do when color grading is going back into your grade and just have a look at how your final grade is looking, and then just tweak it a little bit more, like I do here with these 3 shots. So as you can see, I even did some changes in the raw settings here just to get the roll off of the highlights a bit better. Grade it, save it, and then come back a little later, just have a coffee, just go out for a bit, and then revisit your work, because your eyes actually trick you into seeing things, and just getting away from it and then getting back really helps a lot to get the best grade possible. So, and that's it for the grading part. I know this wasn't a step-by-step guide on how to create a film look. This is more of a guideline. This topic really is very in-depth, and there is a lot more to learn and to explain. So I promise to do a future video where we're gonna have a look at some vintage photos, and we're gonna break down what's happening in terms of color in those pictures, and then I'm gonna show you in Premiere or DaVinci Resolve how to create those looks. So let's do a quick summary of what we did today. So first, the concept. Have an idea of what you want to shoot, what type of style, what type of film, and shoot accordingly. And then when you're about to shoot, think of the way it would have been shot when shooting on film. So use handheld, shoot real time. If you're shooting 60mm, drop the frame rate. Now you have your concept, now you're ready to shoot. Be smart about the lenses that you use. For example, use vintage lenses, or when you're shooting with newer lenses, consider using, for example, the Tiffin Pro Mist filter that softens up your footage and gives it more of a soft, dreamy feel, which can simulate film. The last tip that I'm gonna give you that wasn't mentioned in the intro sequence is when you're shooting in a high resolution, for example 6K on the Blackmagic, 4K on a Red. A tip that I have found to be very useful is when you shoot 4K, make your timeline bigger, so for example 6K, and upscale your footage. Because 4K, it contains obviously a lot of pixels and a lot of detail, but when you upscale your footage and you enlarge the pixels in the frame, it gets less detailed. And upscaling your footage really gives it more of a film feel. I encourage you to just try that and see what it does in your timeline. For example, with the Blackmagic and the Red, it is a useful technique, but I can't say it would work on Canon cameras or Sony cameras because I haven't tried that. And that's it for today. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you don't miss future uploads, and see you in the next video. Later.